Having a tough boss means living under very demanding expectations. Maybe they expect you to anticipate their every need, most importantly, the ones they never verbalize. Maybe they expect you to work long hours at great personal cost to the rest of your life. Maybe they expect you to have a great fashion sense. I mean, a really great fashion sense. One that in some cases can never rise to the actual expectations themselves. Because your boss, the devil, wears Prada too. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater.
All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing The Devil Wears Prada 2. The Devil Wears Prada 2, written by Aline, Brosh, McKenna, directed by David Frankel, starring Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, Emily Blunt, Stanley Tucci, Justin Theroux, and Kenneth Branagh. Per usual, for a complete listing of the cast and crew, you can check out the link in our show notes. It is just me today. The Devil Wears Prada 2. This is the follow-up to The Devil Wears Prada, a 2006 film, which I saw at a drive-in in Pennsylvania because I was working as a counselor at a summer camp at the time. The Devil Wears Prada is one of my favorite movies. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the way the fashion and New York are intertwined. This is very much the idealized version of New York. Wet pavements, high fashion, apartments affordable for some reason, or everyone's insanely rich. It's a different type of New York that you get to see here. Having in 2006, having barely been to New York versus now having been to New York, stayed in New York in all types of different ways and capacities, it feels like there is a version of New York that is absolutely represented in the original Devil Wears Prada. And for me, it makes me nostalgic for the way that I thought New York was. I still love New York as it is now, but there was a way that it's shown in this movie in particular that makes me say, ooh, yeah, sexy, money, getting drinks with friends, looking cool. The original Devil Wears Prada is about a reporter named Andy Sachs who gets a job at Runway magazine as an assistant to the head of the magazine, Miranda Priestley, who is played by Meryl Streep. Anne Hathaway plays Andy Sachs. She's working alongside Emily Blunt, who is the first assistant, and Stanley Tucci, who is Miranda Priestley's right-hand man, Nigel. Stuff ensues. It's a fish out of water story, and also kind of, ugly girl turned beautiful swan story type thing. And it gets to the end, and by the end of the film, Andy has parted ways with Runway magazine. When we pick up in the sequel, Runway has published a story about a fast fashion company that apparently has some sweatshop dealings and some not so great business practices. And as a result, Andy, who is now an established journalist and also dresses very, very fly all the time, she is called upon to come back to Runway as the features editor to kind of help them refine their way and kind of get some of the stink off of them from the bad press they got from publishing this article. So it is essentially reassembling the crew. Andy Sachs is now back at Runway, working in a closer capacity with Miranda Priestley, who is still the same old Miranda Priestley. If you know her from the first film, she's very off-putting, she's very rude, she's very dismissive, she wants things done her way, she's very impatient. But Andy is back there, but she's better now. She knows more what's going on. She's still the same plucky character we know from season 1, just with better fashion and a lot more experience and knowledge. I really liked this movie. I really did. I dare say there's parts of me that felt like I might like it more than the original. Not seriously, I wouldn't, like, that's not like I would not say it is officially better. I just love it when a film grows up with me and doesn't just say, hey, remember nostalgia? It just says, hey, like, we're going to tell you a story that is from this moment right now, but it's with characters that are familiar to you. I feel like Toy Story always does a very good job of doing that, of convincing me that I should watch it again, because they're going to tackle something that is very present and important to me now. By the time you get to Toy Story 3, Andy is going to college, and I'm fully an adult, having been a teenager when Toy Story came out. Now I'm fully an adult watching Andy go to college and say goodbye to his toys. And that really meant something to me. They were talking about the progress. They were talking about a movie that Toy Story 3 is also still a kid's film, but there was so many ways in which they decided to tell a story that resonates with the people who grew up with Toy Story. And I feel like The Devil Wears Prada 2, it does a very good job of immediately making this a story about magazines going digital and journalism dying. And because that is the linchpin of the story, all you have to do is update all of the characters to say, what would they be doing in this world? And because everything that the characters are doing in this world is 100% believable, it makes sense, and it's true to who I knew of them as their characters. Even there's a side character played by Tracy Toms that is Anne Hathaway's best friend, who's in the first movie, also in this one, is now a big-time art gallery owner and has made money, lives in a beautiful apartment, has a child, and is raising her on her own. It's little things like that that makes me think, wow, y'all really cared about these characters. Y'all cared about what it was like to look in on these characters again. And I feel like that's, to me, the only way you get something like this is when you bring back the original writer and the original director and the original cast, which is what they did. And somehow they didn't make a movie that felt stale and old and a bunch of referential jokes. They played the hits. It's a lot of ways. There's a lot of the same beats as the original movie. And it's not necessarily bad, except in one case, in that I don't think Andy needs a love interest. And if she does have a love interest, I don't know that she needs friction in her romantic story. Sure, it adds another layer to the film, but I don't know that it was necessary. In some ways, that felt superfluous to me. Although I liked the guy and felt like they did have good chemistry and I wanted to see more of them together, but I didn't need to. You know what? I take that back. I did not want to see more of them together. I did not want to see more of them together. I enjoyed seeing them together and I think I got enough. But at some point, a conflict arises and the same story beat is done, in which they must take a break because she's taking an international trip, which is the same thing that happens in the first film. Maybe this trip is coming at a good time so we could take a little break. And for me, I just remember thinking, okay, I mean, you're just basically pushing this guy away so we can worry about the main plot and we'll come back to him later. Which is fine, but again, I don't know if we needed Andy to have romance in her life or to have romantic friction in her life when her work was, there was enough friction at work. There was more than enough friction at work. And then the only other thing I didn't like about this film is there's a confrontation between Emily, played by Emily Blunt, and Miranda that it doesn't really make sense to me, given where the characters are in their arcs. There's a back and forth that happens. Miranda is very dismissive and insulting in a way that didn't make sense based on where Emily's character was established early in the film. It seems they kind of drifted away from that dynamic. It's a new dynamic that's established between Miranda Priestley and Emily, who's now the head of Dior, which hopefully that's not a spoiler, but it's kind of in the trailers. So the only reason why I'm saying all this is to say, like, when this confrontation happens, I remembered thinking, this doesn't feel very progressive of the character of Miranda Priestley. But shortly after that, there are several things that happen that show that the character is progressing forward. But there was an action that I feel like they were afraid to take that they did not take. And that is this idea of knowing when you are an obstacle now, you're in the way, you're holding up progress, you're not moving things forward. And I feel like this movie starts to tackle that, but doesn't quite tackle it as well as it could have. And if the movie had been worse, this would be a bigger dock against it. But the rest of the movie is pretty good. It's not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but the first act had me really thinking that, oh, wow, they really did their homework. They did a movie that's relevant to right now at a fashion magazine as it's trying to survive in a world that's increasingly digital. Yes, that's a good story to tell about these characters. But there's just a few little bobbles there that just felt like, nah, I don't know if you need this, or I don't know if this is what you meant for it to be. And I would say fixing those bobbles certainly elevates this film from the rating that I gave it to, a pretty high rating for, I would say, for a sequel, especially a sequel like this. The last thing I'll say is they really don't make movies like this anymore. There's just like the jazz and the orchestral score in the background, and just wide sweeping shots of the city and of mansions and all that stuff that just I forget about the early aughts and how they just used to do this all the time in movies. Just wide shots establishing characters walking up to a building or driving up in luxury to a building. I miss that. I don't feel like I'm seeing it that often, because I always notice it when I see it. And I remember thinking, oh, they don't do that anymore. In the early 2000s, most films that came out had, like, if you think about something like The Italian Job or any of the Ocean's 11s, 12s, 13s, there's just a bunch of movies that came out then that just have that orchestral score and just wide sweeping shots of whatever we're about to go into. The establishment is just very good, and it made me nostalgic for this type of movie making. With all of that being said, I would rate this movie a 3.75 out of 5. I think it's a very good sequel. I think it potentially could have reached 4.5 in my opinion, because there were just parts of it that they were headed for a high rating early in the film. And then the second act there's some pacing issues, and there's just a couple of unnecessary parts of the film that I feel like maybe could have been edited out, could have made it a little tighter, a little sharper. But I think the thing you really want to know is, if you saw the original, should you see this? They did not fail. They did not let us down. This is a very good sequel. If you liked the original, you probably won't think about most of the things that I just said. You'll really just think about how excited you are to see Andy Sachs and Miranda Priestley looking great on the big screen. And everyone looks wonderful. Everyone looks so good. I know you're not supposed to talk about people's looks, but everybody looks so good. They look so good. The fashion is so good. Every suit that Stanley Tucci had on, I thought, man, do they make that in bigger sizes? Because wow, that is a nice suit. And I just thought that over and over and over and over again. So great film. If you like the first one, you will also like this one. Take your girlfriends, take your daughters, take your aunties, take your mothers, take your sons. I liked it. Take your husbands, drag them out. They'll have a fine time, at least just looking at the fashions and enjoying those portions of it. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. I mixed this episode. Per usual, I'm still working hard. By the time this episode comes out, I think I will have released another episode of On the Couch for Patreon, and I have been working on a pilot of a new show. That's right, there's a new show that I'm working on. And I recently got a new gig working on a different podcast for someone else. It's a non-Oh It's Big Ron Studios project. So I'm pretty excited. It takes some of the pressure off of me and I feel a little bit better. But I still want to keep making the things that I want to make. I want to still make the projects that I feel excited and passionate about. And the way that I do that is from contributions from listeners like you that like my work. It's work. It's labor. It's a labor of love, but it's still labor. If that means something to you, go to patreon.com/ohitsbigron or go to the link in our show notes. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about The Devil Wears Prada 2, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, Threads, or Letterboxd at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening.
I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm
Fully an adult